Carol, I'll share screen once you're through there. Perfect.
And I will jump in again really quick to just note that we will record this portion of the call and then we'll turn it off for the question and answers for folks.
Perfect. Let's see, and I'll put it in present. Can you see that as is that the screen that's correct one being shared there?
Yep, you're good to go.
All right, well, good. Um, yeah, thanks so much, Marcy and Carol, for inviting me and other folks for taking time out of your days on a holiday today, but also a work day for some of us too. I think it's kind of a combo on this one. Super happy to be here to present. Um, the topic of the day that I'm going to speak to is developing a Washington grown and manufactured buckwheat pancake mix for school meal programs and more. It's a long, unwieldy title, but it's just a review of the efforts that I've been involved in and have been helping with. This was funded by a Western SARE project that was led by a team including Dr. Kevin Murphy and Dr. Girish Ganjal, and then myself and Justin O'Day as well. And then with a really great team with a couple different graduate students, Rachel Breslauer and Taylor Ryman. The part of the work that I was involved in included field trials, but then also this sort of value-added market development initiative. It's also been really a team effort, so I think it's not just giving credit to kind of like see the names, but also to see how big of a team it takes, I think, to kind of move this project forward of developing a product, testing it, and getting it out to schools. So I've worked really closely out of my office with Annie Salafsky in Extension and then Amanda Musser, who's been super instrumental out of the SNAP program because of her relationship with schools. Elizabeth Nalbandian and Grish's program helped develop the mix along with Ghislaine Jolly from Innovation Chicks out of Central Washington. And then for some of the market support, we are teamed up with OSPI. I'll speak to that. Certainly, none of this is possible without the farmers that we've worked with. And there's just three there as an example, Kersop, Headland, and Fagardis. And then this distribution team on the bottom right, including a couple different food hubs, Southwest Washington Food Hub and Link. Viva Farms currently helping distribute as well. And then we've done a lot of our testing at Garfield Elementary and with different educational service districts. So um, that's who we've been partnering with to kind of develop this idea and move it down the field. The overall pieces of the project, and there's a picture of buckwheat flour because that's the common thread through everything. There's probably several common threads, but buckwheat's a beautiful grain. It's a beautiful flour. It's really fun to work with. It's nutritionally dense. It's got a lot of good attributes. It's good in the field for pollinators. It's a good cover crop. So it's fun all around, and it's fun to try to find ways to make it economically viable for more people to grow it. So here's just the overall kind of layout of what we have been involved in, farmer trials and engaging producers to get their feedback on how buckwheat does in their fields. We conducted a survey with Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. Erica Lamson helped us with that. She's there at OSPI. I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. We certainly needed to recruit partners for manufacturing a possible value-added product, and there's been multiple along the way. I'm going to speak to Cascade Milling, but there's been others. Um, Recipe development, getting the mix distributed back out through partner distributors, like I just mentioned at the end of that previous slide. Doing a lot of product testing to try to see if our target population would accept what we were working on, which are like third and fourth and fifth graders, and getting their feedback in a survey format about interesting novel products is definitely like a high point of this project and maybe even my overall time at WSU. And then piloting the mix with a bunch of different school districts and then getting their feedback on those on their experiences. So just starting with farmers, I'll just kind of go through and give sort of an overview so people get a little bit of a flavor of of kind of how this came together and what the different steps of the process were. So this goes back to probably 2022. We had a couple different field seasons with producers. This is a photograph in 2023 at Fagerness Farm in Rochester. And we were implementing what was called a mother-baby trial. So a lot of different field sites. We had 10 in Western Washington for buckwheat. This project was linked to a project with millet. So there was 10 sites out in Eastern Washington managed by Taylor. And then Rachel Breslauer and our team down here managed the buckwheat trials in Western Washington. And we were looking for marketable traits, for variety in the field, for what varieties did well, obviously yield, ability to combine and bring to harvest, thinking about different seeding rates, and then getting feedback from growers on what the obstacles to growing more of it might be. And certainly marketing and market access was big. So people like it, they like integrating it, like the diversity. Um, they want to see the pollinator benefits, they want to see the weed smothering benefits and crop rotations, but there's a real limit on market access and market opportunity. So we knew that would be the case. That's why this project that was funded was originally focused on market development, value-added production, as well as variety evaluation and nutritional characteristics. So the Western Stair trial or project was really diverse, maybe more diverse than most Western Stairs I've been involved in. You know, it spans food science, it spans market development, it spans variety evaluation, it spans getting feedback from growers. So it was a very ambitious project. Um, Kevin, like I said, Kevin spearheaded it, and then a lot of us joined the effort. And so it was fun to have that like sort of holistic look at not just like can you get people to get interested in it from an agronomic point of view, but what's really necessary if we want to see acreage expansion of this crop in both, because it was millet and buckwheat, but we're focused on buckwheat here. So the goals were to, an acknowledgement that market development is essential to successfully integrate millet and buckwheat into cropping systems. And then we wanted to look at how well they worked in different products, everything from noodles to beer, breakfast bars, and bread and pancakes. And if anybody's seen some of the news highlights coming out from WSU, you'll see that some of the buckwheat pancake testing that Garish and Elizabeth and their team, there's another graduate student who worked on that, or getting some public visibility around these efforts. And then this kind of summarizes a lot of what we saw in the fields. There's some basic agronomic challenges. Here's a picture of a pretty substantially lodged field of buckwheat that's probably too densely planted, too moist of soil, too much fertility, and all coming together in a crop that makes pretty much impossible to combine. That's not going to dry down in time. Um, and so, baby steps on the agronomics. And some of the natural variation that we saw was is nice in terms of figuring out what would potentially work best for growing recommendations. So lower seeding rates, cautious on the fertility, not overwatering, getting timing right, a lot of that stuff. So those primary bullet points are the first one, two, three there. But overall, people were, like I said, very much interested in it, but there's some fundamental production skills that they need to be covered. And then this last quote that's bolded, the grower only wants to grow buckwheat as a cover crop unless he can make more money per pound selling it as a specialty item. So a clear sort of mandate to do more in that regard to help people get crops to market. This is a slide that shows some of the collaboration with OSPI. This was another thing that I just really enjoyed about the project. I haven't done a lot of work with school food service providers in my work, obviously mostly in agriculture. Um, and so we teamed up with the Washington School Nutrition Association, and that was included in the original proposal. But so it was interesting kind of building that relationship and seeing if we could get a pre-conference tour integrated at their conference. I think this is a great opportunity for integrating agriculture into our, school meal programs around the state. That WSNA conference rotates every year. They loved providing an opportunity to get people out of the conference center, go visit farms. They were very enthusiastic, as you can see from this picture. We had really good food. We made a bunch of items with buckwheat. Um, and then on the left is just a bunch of the feedback from the survey that we conducted with OSPI. That top group of three is like an open response, like what products generally would you be interested in that include millet or buckwheat? Not necessarily ones that we were working on. So it's everything under the sun from wheat tortilla to, pizza with a local flour, a breakfast bar. And then we had a few that they asked about specifically, like, would you be interested in focaccia bread, a pancake mix, and a breakfast bar? And this is kind of how that shook out. What's actually interesting about this is that by the end, we were finding ways to combine both the breakfast bar and a pancake mix, and you'll see that. So the pancake mix turns basically into a breakfast bar, but I didn't really connect the dots on that until the Ellensburg School District did just a few weeks ago. So you'll see how that turns out. Here's the school buyer perspectives. I think this is a kind of a cool list because it shows what they think are the success factors in introducing a new product into the school meal programs. So they really want to see whole grain rich products, which means not only that it is whole grain rich, but you need for any product that's developed, all of the paperwork that they can use to verify that it meets whole grain rich standards and how many credits they get per serving per student it meets. And all the ESD providers know that math and they can help us do it. And that's what they did to me. Meredith Arsenault helped me a whole bunch. And then also, um, another ESD 113 or 101, Abby Miller helped, I think is her last name, helped me do that. So just a note that um, those are all the things to be working on concurrently to working on a product or if you want to develop one. I think the second one is probably the most important one, even though it's, say, not ranked the first, but in terms of student acceptance, the literature is pretty clear that like introducing a new product into a school meal program is not just about how it tastes or how it looks. It's how many times students are exposed to it and how fun that exposure is, which creates all sorts of opportunities for extension because we're all about fun, interactive, engaging opportunities. So that's where Snap Ed comes in. They have all these relationships with the schools and they can help us put on events, do taste tests. And I'll show a picture in a few slides illustrating kind of how that help has helped us. Ease of preparation, nutrition crediting statement, competitive pricing, although, well below the other priorities of whole grain rich and student acceptance at 57%. And then meeting the WSDA grant parameters for farm to school funding of greater than 50%. And then the types of promotion they'd be interested in receiving to help kind of promote would be posters, flyers, and then to a quite a bit lower extent, classroom curriculum. But I think that's where taste tests, it is curriculum, but they might not think of it as curriculum. But that engagement in the classroom is both educational and and it just wins students over because they like to have fun. What was cool about this survey is that we got out of 220 or more, 224, no, yeah, out of 300 school districts in the state, 57 wanted to keep working with us. And I think others do too, but they like explicitly signed up. So that was a great way to be like, wow, we have 57 potential partners going forward who would want to receive this pancake mix. Like that's more than we can serve. So we have a lot of opportunity in front of us. This is the manufacturing partnership that we established. This is another one that, um, like these, what I've learned, and I'm not a product development specialist, I'm a extension specialist who kind of has to be jack of all trades, like we do in our communities to meet the needs of what folks are wanting of us. Um, so it's interesting to learn how long these different things take. Um, But I think my advice, I guess, if I'm even qualified to give advice in this, is that um, we have to like really keep our eyes open for opportunities for these partnerships. Um, I happened to learn about Royal City through a WSU newsletter, and they just talked about or learned about Cascade Milling in a WSU newsletter, talking about they had developed the pancake mix, and I like immediately got online and emailed Patrick Boss, their sales manager, and that was in July or like May of 2023, I guess is kind of my best estimate. And it's taken, 2 years to just build a relationship, sort of build trust, build interest, shared interest, and to get a sense of like what the opportunities and limitations are within their mill. Um, because just introducing a new product is not easy in a mill. You might have to shut the mill down and have a different grain go in there. If it's organic certified, then there's a whole new product. All that certification paper has to be navigated. They don't just have bulk items of any ingredient that you may want to use already on hand. So if you want to develop a mix, like it kind of needs to match some of their capacity, or else if it doesn't match ingredients they have, you need to allow more time for that mill partner to find those ingredients and bring them in. So there's a real close linkage between recipe development and the mill that you're working with. So that was interesting to learn. Fortunately they had a pancake mix and we just changed sort of ratios and then also obviously added the buckwheat. So it probably could be better, but we didn't have sort of all the ingredients under the sun to work with. And so we had this kind of recipe formulation across Cascade Milling, Elizabeth and Garish at the food science program, and then this contract nutritionist, Ghislaine Jolly, who joined us, which everybody was instrumental in certainly having somebody who's developed a lot of recipes for a lot of companies is pretty much probably essential, at least to keep it on a relatively short time frame. And then there's this relationship trying to get the buckwheat milled since Cascade Milling couldn't shut their mill down to just run buckwheat. So we partnered up with Tom Hunt at Camas Country Mill to sort of co-mill for us and then ship it out to Cascade Milling. So not super efficient, but at a small scale to test it of a couple thousand pounds. That's kind of what it took. Um, yeah, I put this up almost on purpose to be like a little bit of a like overkill in words. Like I won't go through all these, but these are the complex aspects of sort of building out a partnership to get a recipe developed that, you kind of can't skip any of these steps. Um, and I've talked through a little bit of them already, just in terms of like the product fit with the mill right here, the facility size and sort of scale to be able to add a new product and integrate um, new ingredients or not. Available equipment. In this case, they couldn't mill, but they could mix. So we had to go find another miller to work with and then get the flour to them. Um, a compatible manufacturing schedule, just in terms of like when we wanted to get something done within a grant, which is always a negative aspect of partnering with private industry to sort of be driven by funding mandates. It just adds an element of stress, but obviously, like at the end of the day, that's what pays, people for their time, so it's essential. Um, and then I've talked a little about distribution networks and NOP, National Organic Program certifications and ingredient selection. The recipe development was also another really like interesting process to go through. Like I said, Ghislaine and Elizabeth were really instrumental. I was just there to essentially facilitate at that point. I don't develop pancake recipes. Um, so it was fun seeing them, but also like urging that process along, keeping on a time frame. I liked Ghislaine's, excuse me. I liked her slogan, you have to deserve to win. You have to really understand what it is kids are eating that you're essentially competing with. And you need to put the time into a good recipe and really test it and really taste it. We made a bunch of different modifications as we went. I mean, it probably took half a year of like making and tasting pancakes to get to a point where, and some of that's just, it's slow to ship ingredients around to get everybody tasting it. Um, so that kind of time allocation is important. And that's a pretty basic recipe. So anything more complex, like, I don't know, a breakfast bar that has to stick together like a Cliff Bar or something, or something else that's not just like a dry mix. This is a really basic mix. It's just an add water mix. Um, so it's time consuming. That's kind of my main point. And I think thinking about and connecting with ESDs early on is really important. We have to be conscientious of like developing that grain crediting calculation early on. If there's any sort of variations that we want to include, maybe those are things there's funding for through like USDA commodity, payment programs. So just making sure that in a process where a product is getting developed, you're really going to kind of partners in the field who like this is their area of expertise, like ESDs. I sort of can't emphasize that enough. Like we didn't necessarily do that early enough, and so it's a little bit of scrambling at the very end to sort of bring them up to speed and they're, gracious enough to do it, but I think they'll appreciate a little more advance notice. So anyway, that's the kind of the long list, and I can show you some more fun pictures now. Um, we, like I said, landed on pancakes. This was because they had a pancake mix in-house that we could just work and kind of like create a variation on. We were interested in other mixes that might have been more versatile, like muffins, but they don't have a muffin mix. And starting from scratch on that would really just require like we are totally going to build a product up from scratch, and it's going to take a lot of time. Like that's a big, in my experience, which is limited, that would have been a much. We didn't have time for it, and we had a 3-year project. But by the time we finally got to this product development stage, it was way past the opportunity for something like that. Um, Yeah, so these are, these are the considerations that we took in mind as we were developing this, being flexible. You see a picture of both a pancake here as well as a bar. So we wanted it to be able to be made on a sheet pan so that schools could, there are automated pancake flippers, but that's not something most schools or school districts have. So sheet pans was really kind of a key um, modification for that. And then I've talked a little bit about SnapEd partnership. This was taken probably towards the beginning of the project. We have students who have been involved in buckwheat now for like 3 years. And like we've seen them grow up over a few years through elementary school. They know us when we come back into the school. So I really highly encourage, one, it's really, really fun going into schools and serving pancakes and like growing buckwheat cover crop in school gardens is exhilarating. The kids respond super well. And then when it comes to tasting it, they're already like 80% of the way there. They've grown it, they've seen it, they know what the plant looks like. Now, when it turns into a much darker pancake, they still have those natural adoption inhibitions. Um, but these were fun events, and like I said, we partnered up with Amanda Musser. That's Annie Salowski, who I work with in extension programs and AP. I don't have a picture from Amanda, but she was really helpful. Well, we did a bunch of taste testing and we put it in really fun, basic terms, with these funny emojis that kids would respond well to. That pie chart shows that between like and neutral, we have about, 2/3 of the student body, which again, like instead of a white colored light pancake, you're giving them like a very dark pancake. I mean, it's like they've nothing they've seen. So I think that's pretty good. These are some of the responses that they gave. Um, I I I don't want to start with a negative one, but it is kind of funny. This first one, it's not chill, dislike very much because it tastes burnt. But then other ones, so much flavor, tastes good, tastes burnt, but a little, but is good, just how I like it. Really okay, actually, tastes like a muffin. And then there was other ones that I didn't really want to put up here that were hilarious. And so this was, useful, and we felt like we were on the right track in terms of the feedback. Like there is going to be a hurdle, but a lot of the kids were responding well. We did some taste testing out at the county fair in Thurston County and just asked people if they'd be willing to purchase it if it was commercially available. And, about 90% said yes. This is one of our county commissioners, Commissioner Mejia, right here on the left. And we had a really cool buckwheat and millet poster made to help with visibility of the project, and a bunch of different county admin staff getting involved. So fun to involve folks in different areas, and the county fairs are great ones for that. And so they were really excited to have Thurston County grown buckwheat. This came from Kersop Farm, served in pancakes. Those ones on the top are not buckwheat; those are normal mix. But the buckwheat, you can see them on the bottom. There's a stack of mixed pancakes, and they were really excited to support farmers in this regard. Most important of all is the food service staff. They really know what kids are going to like. They've seen it not just as a student, they see generation after generation, grade after grade, right, of student. And so this is Kathy on the left. Peterson, I don't know the name of the food service worker on the right, but Kathy helped us make a video as a how-to guide for serving buckwheat pancakes in school meal programs. So she was a fun teammate to add along the way. Um, I see him probably down in the last minute and a half, and I can go through these slides pretty easily. This is the label. It's also pretty involved to get the label in place and all the nutrition crediting information. So this is where Ghislaine was essential because she has programs where she can plug in. the formulation and spit out a nutrition label. And that if you want it quick and you're trying to get a label on a bag that somebody can actually distribute and Cascade Milling will buy off on, this took a lot of time. Just going on right now is a distribution of about 1,700 pounds of the mix through three regions up in Spokane in the Northeast, Mount Vernon in the Northwest, and then Southwest Washington out of Chehalis, the food hub partners are who are helping us develop that. And then these are other little pieces that take a lot of time. You're trying to give people in the school meal programs resources, um, information on preparing it. You want their feedback. So, five different sort of QR codes here, getting feedback, taking them to a video for how to use the mix. If they need information on the grain equivalents, that's there. And then, supporting the farm to school program and then some of the other partners on the work. Let's see. The one on the right is our survey that we handed out. So people would try to fill that out. We gave them kind of a dedicated piece on the left on preparing buckwheat pancakes. That's the link to our video. And then the grain crediting statement on the right there. So a lot of little pieces to like try to put together because those are the questions that you're going to get. This is just a kind of current real time bags of pancake mix out at Link Foods in Spokane. And then our video on the left with Kathy starring in the middle, Amanda on the left, and Annie on the right. And we had some funding to put a video together, so we had that professionally shot. And if that is another thing too, it's nice to give people something that's more of a moving image sort of download, so to speak, on the project. Um, but making that concise definitely takes funding and somebody who knows what they're doing, and also a really good script for them, even because even professionals aren't going to know exactly what you want to deliver. And then kind of the grand finale here, last slide and a half, I guess, Ellensburg School District Facebook post, and they made this super amazing breakfast bar with this apricot swirl mixed into it, and a really cute picture of this girl tasting it. And then just to see this pop up randomly, I mean, we knew that Ellensburg was getting it because we're tracking the list of which school districts this mix is going to. There's about 20 right now across those three regions. But then just to see them like feed it back and we could see it sort of impromptu was really rewarding. And then finally, Cascade Milling is working with WSU to commercialize the mix and actually use a WSU variety that Kevin Murphy just released called Tinker. So linking together food science, commercialization, a private partner, and then the breeding program on top of it. And I was telling Marcy and Carol at the beginning, if that really happens, that's like a extension personnel's like dream come true. I mean, to see something go through from concept to possible commercialization, specifically something that's for nutrition and kids' health. And that's what's most rewarding to me in the work. So with that, I'll stop and sorry for just kind of talking sort of incessantly for 25 minutes.
That was really great, Stephen. Thank you so much for sharing this really powerful story.